I always tell myself the worst that can happen is a no. Someone tells me no. That's the worst that can happen. So
All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. And I am so excited because if you were here last week, you got to see a panel of some of the top agents in the country, top listing agents. And I'm sure a lot of you were like, it was awesome, but a little frustrating because I wanted to go even deeper. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go super laser beam today. And we're doing like an FBI style interrogation of Marco Sanchez today. I'm just kidding. They're putting him under the hot lamp. It's going to be great. No, we're going to really talk about what creates that level of abundance in your business. Last year, down market, everyone's like, it's hard to find inventory. It's hard to find transactions. Marco sold over 60 homes himself. His team sold over 80. He's also on the side flipping houses. He's got his dealer's license, so he flips cars. Like the guy is just a machine. And oh, by the way, he took 90 minutes out last week to talk to us. He's taking 90 minutes out this week to talk to us because apparently he still has free time. How's that work? And so that's what we're going to learn today. So Marco, thanks so much for being here today and for taking some time to share with other great agents here inside the community, man. Really appreciate you.
absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jeff. My name is Marco Sanchez. I run the Sanchez team, and I'm based out of Woodburn, here right next to Salem. So
I love it. Well, so we're going to approach this one a little bit differently. So for anyone who's been to a lot of these core 90s, what you'll know about our process is generally we'll just hand over the mic to a presenter like Marco. And he and I spoke and we said, let's do this one more like an interview. Like, let's make it really dynamic so that it can kind of ebb and flow and go to all the nooks and crannies, right? Like there's a huge amount of validity. We did that last week. We got a lot of really positive feedback. So we're going to do a little bit more this week. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. And for anyone watching on the replay afterward, hopefully we'll drop some chapter kind of demarcations in here. So Marco, let's start with this because I think people sometimes like to learn your past, and I don't want to spend the whole session on this because people want to know like where the hell are you finding 80 transactions in a small town? But how did you get into real estate? How did you decide on like what were you doing before that? How did you get into the business? And how long has it been? Kind of give us the nuts and bolts there.
yeah, so I got into real estate about 4.5 years ago, but I come from the car industry. I started selling cars at the age of 15 when I was a sophomore in high school. And I sold cars up until 2 years ago, like at a dealership. And I just wanted to do something different. I got a little bored of just having a full-time job, and I wanted to do something different. So I looked into real estate. I feel like it opens up opportunities for me to do other stuff and meet people, and that's why I got into real estate.
Okay, so that's awesome, and thank you for sharing. So describe your personality. Like if you had to describe yourself, because I think sometimes people want to know, like, am I missing the secret sauce? Is Marco like some like male cheerleader? Like he just gets out there and talks to everybody. Like describe your personality. What do you like? What's Marco like?
Marco likes to have fun with everybody, but when I show up to do a transaction, to sell a house or to list a home or to show a house, I like to get along with my people. I like to connect with them in some sort of way. And whenever I don't, then that's usually when I might just have to cut people off or refer them out versus having to put myself in a very uncomfortable situation working with somebody that I don't want to work with. So
that makes total sense. So, and so you're fairly outgoing. Are you like a party animal? Are you like a more like chill, hang out kind of a guy with friends? Do you like to go out to dinners? What are you doing on that? And by the way, I'm going to circle back around to this because what you guys are going to learn in a minute about Marco's business is that a lot of it has been created based on his sphere, the web he's managed to kind of weave in his local area. So tell me about that. Like, are you out Mr. Club in it, or are you going over to friends' house? Like, what's your fun time look like?
My fun time is mostly spent around traveling, hanging out with the family.
That's awesome.
I have two Rottweilers, but I guess if I describe myself, I just like to say that I'm pretty chill, just laid back. I try to be mellow, but when it comes to business, I do like to be aggressive. And I think negotiations is definitely my biggest skill.
I love that. And hold on, I was trying to, I can't find a picture of both of them, but I'm going to share a pic real quick of one of you with one of your Rottweilers. Here we go. For anybody who just wants to check that out. Look at that. Look at that bad boy. That's awesome. I don't know who looks tougher in that shot. So that's awesome. Those are great dogs. So that's really fun. So you've got and what kind of family size are we talking about? You said you like to hang out with family, go travel with that.
Just my wife and I.
Perfect. Awesome. And when you travel, where do you love to go? Favorite place?
I go to Vegas often. I like to go to Vegas. I like to hang out. We like to try different kinds of foods.
Fun.
So
I love it.
For myself, I think my goal is to try to have one small trip a month. That's the goal. Perfect. And that's kind of just to just take some time off, even if it's just a 1-day trip.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. And it's so refreshing to like get yourself, Lexi and I always call it just breaking our routine, but it's like, or a pattern interrupt, right? Like when you do something different, we were just in Iceland and it's like, you just see stuff that's different. Your brain goes, oh, right. Yeah. Like you like reconnect with yourself. So it's really healthy. Okay. So let's get down to some brass tacks in business. So like your very first year in real estate, how'd it go?
Went good. I think I did 10 transactions. My first year. I think second year I did like a little over 20. Third year I did I think 35 or 36. And then I'm up at 60 for last year.
That's awesome. And those are all your numbers.
These are all my numbers. And then I just started the team 2 years ago. And they did an additional 20 deals last year.
Nice. So 60 plus 20. So there's 4 years worth of numbers. That's crazy. So 10, 20, 36, 80 really. So it's kind of like doubling. Like we could round those and say 10, 20, 40, 80.
Yeah. And I've been trying to double my GCI every year. That's my biggest goal is can I double it?
Right. Yes is the answer.
For last year, it just might be a little difficult for this year, but that's the goal.
Come on, man. Don't give up. It's only February. So that's good. Well, I love that. So year one was 10 units. I feel like that's a really relatable number for a lot of agents. You know, average numbers, depends on who you ask in the industry, but have always been somewhere between like 6 and 12, right? So agents are generally selling like maybe a house a month ish. And you're at a position where you're selling 5 houses a month. So that's different, right? And so we want to talk about what's the difference then between year one, year two, year three. So like year one, you're doing 10 units. Where'd those deals come from? Like, what are you doing in year one? You just came out of the auto industry. You knew that. You knew how to sell. The thing I love about car guys, they know how to sell, man. Like, and it's not a fear point. It's like an excitement point, right? Like, let's sell something. That's great. But year one, sell 10 houses. Where are those deals coming from? What did you do to find the business?
I called everybody that I knew and I let them know I got my real estate license. I took a lot of people out for lunch. I want to say the first 2 years, I invested over 60% of all my income back into my real estate business, back into myself. But yeah, it's just mainly just my sphere. And I'm going to share these numbers up front for last year. 25% of my business was referral based. 25% was my sphere, 25% was repeat, and then like 15% were just investors. And I only did 2 deals from social media. And that's why I'm going to really see where I put the money in this year, because we got to look at our numbers. Sometimes realtors will go and dump 20, 30 grand a year in online or social media marketing. But at the end of the day, that's not even what's bringing the money. So my goal this year is to put most of my investment back into my sphere, back into my past clients and referrals.
Yeah, totally. Because you're looking at the numbers, so you understand what's actually working. Which is so funny. It's like a lot of times people are like, I don't understand. I invested. It's like you poured all the gasoline in the trunk. That's why your car's not running.
Yeah.
You got to put the gas in the engine, right? Like if the engine
Yeah.
is referrals in your business, then that's where you put the gasoline. You don't put it, pour it over the car. We've all seen those YouTube videos. So some dummy driving off with it still plugged in. Hopefully that'll not be me when I get older. So that's awesome. So I wrote those numbers down for anyone who wants them: 25% referral, 25% sphere. And what you're going to find, I'm sure, as your business grows, because I've seen this time and time and time again, right? Like you're obviously a top 1/10 of 1% producer in the country already, but your repeat and referral business will continue to grow. It will continue to occupy a bigger space. And actually, if we add up referral, repeat, and sphere of influence, what is that? 75% of your business right there.
Yeah. So if I wouldn't have done anything, if I would have just sat back and did something else, I believe that I would have still done 50% of all the business I did, without really having to do much. So
Yeah, that's huge. So, okay, so year one, let's go back though. So year one, you invested like 60% of your income into your business to really grow. I did that too because I was used to a really low income. I mean, I shouldn't say really low. I was used to a comparably low income because I came out of being a college professor and like newsflash, if anyone doesn't know, they don't get paid much. So I was doing that. So I was like, oh, I could just keep my spending here and like I'm making this, so I can spend all of this on my business. That was a new thing for me. So I'm like, well, I can work really hard, which would be great. So I always joke that I worked 7 days a week because there weren't 8. That was my whole thing. But it's interesting to hear someone else say, and then I reinvested deeply in my business. Talk about that reinvestment. Is that investing in these lunches and dinners? Was it investing in education? Was it investing in travel? Like, what were you doing?
definitely education, dinners, taking people out that I wanted to do business with, that I was on them for a couple of years before they decided to work with me, and just really on myself, and also even buying myself the suit that I wanted to buy, the nice clothes, the cars, because for me, I'm big on if I feel good, I do good. So that even if it's just like even getting a haircut, um, I'm big on just like go and get a haircut twice a week, or even sometimes 3 times a week. If I have multiple listing appointments, I want to feel good when I go to that appointment, and that's just part of me reinvesting back into myself.
I love that. That's huge. And I'm curious, well, we just saw this come up in the chat. The always amazing John Sellers joining us today. And he says, does your large social media presence help you when you're securing like these referrals, SOI, repeat business, that kind of thing? Is that showing up?
Yeah, it definitely helps. But we're no longer trying to post videos asking for business or talking about real estate so much. We're just trying to be funny, and that's what's been helping a lot. It gets more views. Then I get people texting me telling me, hey, that video was so funny, or that TikTok or whatever it was. And I don't like posting videos. I don't watch any of my videos. I just watch them once they pop up on my phone. But I have someone else that handles all the social media. But that's just you have to do it. You have to get uncomfortable, but I mean, it's just one part of the business.
I love that. Well, and this idea of like creating content that's actually just fun to watch I think it's not just a trend, that's just human nature, right? Like if we give people what they want, it's the old, what do we call that? Give them or advertise the candy, give them vegetables, right? It's like the candy is it's a fun video. It's great to watch. In fact, I can see Josh Boyd on here. He and his wife, Rachel, are out in Atlanta. They're doing cool stuff out there, but like they just posted a video the other day. I just happened to see it, which was like cool places to get sweets in Atlanta, Georgia, right? Like, okay, well, that has nothing to do with buying a house there, but does it get eyeballs? Yes, of course, right? Like that stuff trends up and becomes even more valuable over time because people are like, yeah, I mean, real estate changes. If I advertise one house, that house is sold later on. But if I advertise, these are the cool places to eat, there's probably like a longer tail of relevancy on that video. So it's cool. Okay, so between year 1 and year 2, you went from 10 to 20. What happened there? Like, what was the difference? What made that difference?
I started using a CRM since day one. So anybody that I would add on there, I was reaching out to them at least, even if they were just thinking about buying at some point, like in a couple of years. I was reaching out once a month. I was making my calls. And just anybody that I would talk to, I would just let them know, hey, just I do real estate. Here's my business card. That's really it.
I
There's
love it.
nothing, there's really no secret to it other than just being yourself.
So if I say, because you say you're reaching out once a month, and I know how people's ears interpret that. So like if I say, Marco, I'm thinking about buying a house, but it'll probably be like next year, maybe something like that. So then you reach out to me, what, next month? And what are you saying there?
Hey, it was nice meeting you, Jeff. Just wanted to make sure that we have each other's phone numbers. And that's the first when I make the first contact. That's usually how it goes.
I love
Um,
it.
and then after that, I'll send them a thank you card. Hey, next month, instead of calling them, I'm gonna send them a thank you card. Um, if I find a way to relate to them, if they like cars, if they have a dog, or whatever it is, then I'll start just connecting with them at that point.
All right, I was taking notes here. All right, so we've got make sure we have each other's number. That's number one. Thank you card number two. We're turning it into a system here, folks. Relate and connect, right? And what is relate and connect? It just means find like legitimate common interest, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm
and if
also I'm a dog lover. Yes, Marco has big cars and big dogs. That's awesome. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. And so okay, so you're using your CRM. What CRM are you using?
I just switched from Follow Up Boss to Brevity.
Cool,
Um, and
cool.
that's another investment that we had to make into our business.
Yep,
But it's just it pays itself. And
sure.
also with all my thank you cards, we always send a Starbucks card with it, a gift card.
Love it. I love that. Yeah. Well, and yeah, awesome. See, just anything that's like an item of value. And is it like a $600 Starbucks gift card or is it something
No, it's
small?
just a $5 Starbucks gift card. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Some people think you have to like overinvest and, just doing something nice for people. Like when everyone think to yourself really quickly, if you're watching this, when was the last time you received a free cup of coffee from anybody out of the blue? That's the power of it, right? Like we think, oh, well, that's not very valuable. Really? When was the last time you got one? For me, 7, 8 years, honestly, maybe 9 years. It's been forever. Nobody does it. I don't know why. It's awesome. It's a great move. So I love that. Okay. So then year three, this is where it always starts to get interesting, right? Because now you're starting to really understand the business and clearly you're getting motivated. Now you go from 20 to almost 40 deals that year. You're doubling again. So now you've implemented a CRM. By the way, for anybody at EXP, you've got a CRM that comes with your business for free. Use KV Core. That's awesome. It scales up. Like as your business gets bigger, you might have different needs and then you can get more niche like Marco has. But until you're getting to a big number of transactions, you don't need to look at that. But I will ask this. What was the difference between 20 and 40 deals?
The biggest difference for me personally was that I left my full-time job and I went full-time real estate because the first 2 years I had a full-time job where I had to be there 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Um, and I was just doing real estate on the side. So when I went full-time and pulled the trigger on quitting my job, that was taking care of me pretty well. I was making six figures. It was just a management job. It was fun. But once I pulled the plug and said, okay, I'm just going to focus 100% on my real estate business, that's when I was able to double up again.
Love it. So you basically said no to something.
Yep.
Right. I find a lot of times that's really the key to a lot of people's kind of like next level scale up is like, it's not what am I going to add? It's what am I going to eliminate in order to go to that next level. For some people, it might be like you need to eliminate, 8 hours a day on social media or on Netflix or Hulu or whatever you're addicted to, right? A lot of addictions in the world that don't have groups yet. But screen addiction is a real thing. And it's like just being out there and being active. So with that in mind, because this is an interesting question, then I want to get to this most recent year because this is where it starts getting really exciting. So when you went and you started scaling really bigger like that, right? Like we're in that year where you're going to 40. What were the things that you started to power down that weren't this job? Like I'm curious, how much time a day do you spend watching TV, or do you spend just on your phone like doom scrolling or watching cat videos?
So I got rid of the video games. I got rid of hanging out with friends on the weekends. I got rid of TV in general, Netflix. I mean, I got rid of everything. There's nothing wrong with it, but I wanted to take my business to another level. And I forgot to add the first 2 years in real estate, I took no time off because I had a full-time job. I had zero vacations. I think the only days that I had off were like just Christmas, New Year's, and Thanksgiving. Other than that, I was working every single day of the year. So the first 2 years were tough.
Yeah.
The third year, when I went full-time real estate, um, I got rid of some of the things that were distracting for me. The TV was big. I mean, I just stopped watching TV, stopped watching Netflix shows, and I just started focusing on my business. I would say 12 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a
Yeah.
week.
That's awesome. And what happens with that, just for anyone who's never done it, like you start practicing an elimination diet, you get accidental results. And what I mean by that is like you just don't realize how much time is being slurped up into dumb crap in your world until you get rid of all the dumb crap. And then suddenly it's like, wow, I've just got all this time. Like even if you're less productive during the time that you're working, if you're working more time than the next person, I mean, you think about Marco, he's saying like I was working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. Okay, well, so my guess, and first off, that was almost 365 days a year. So let's just round down to 14. Let's just pretend you had some off days in there, and we'll say 360 days a year. So Marco worked about 5,000 hours in a given year. And I would say a lot of agents try to kind of eke by on 10 hours a week, 48 weeks a year. That's 480. So Marco was doing 10 years worth of man work hours compared to what I would call an average agent's level of commitment. So he's spending 10 years worth of time in 1 year. So is it surprising that he would see 10 years worth of sales results in 1 year? Not necessarily, right? Like once you start looking at it differently, you're like, oh, okay, well, that actually might make a bit more sense. So is that starting to pay off now though? Like, are you, not that you're going to lean back, because I know you, that's not going to happen, but like, are you finding that there's a better or more consistent or more predictable pace now that you're further into the game?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I Now that you put those numbers out, I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. Another thing that I had to sacrifice was family time. That was tough. My brothers, my mom, just family time, the parties. I had to sacrifice all of that for the first couple of years to be able to get to the level where I want to be.
I was adding to the list there. So we've got things that Marco got rid of or at least scaled back pretty aggressively. Games, friends, TV. He said everything. So I put that on the list. Time off, family time, partying. You know, it's interesting because it's such a common thread, I think, but between people who have these like exponentially large results, right? You ask top producer after top producer, like, did you have to sacrifice to get to where you want to be at? Yeah, of course. But you know what they didn't sacrifice is huge earnings. Right? You're sacrificing always one of two things. You're either sacrificing the $1 million income you could have, or you're sacrificing some television watching. So you just have to decide, is watching TV worth $1 million? Because that might be what it's costing you. It's an interesting way to think about it, right? It's just like change the perspective. Okay, so now this is the fun part. So then this last year, you started really kind of leaning in, growing a team. Your transaction count personally went up. Your team's transaction count went up. I'm sure that your net income went up. And I happen to know, because we've talked about it, you're also flipping houses. You're flipping vehicles on the side. Like, where's all this time coming from? Like, where are all these deals coming from now? Have things changed? Did you find like some super secret lead resource where you're just buying all this?
Something that my mentor told me 2 years ago when I joined EXP, and I'm talking about John, was to focus on the money making activities and delegate the activities that are worth 10, 15, $20 an hour to someone else. And I put my numbers down and I did the math and see what I did the math and figured out what I'm worth per hour. So year number 4, which was last year, I took on more help. I added more staff. So that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, because I mean, it's your income that you're having to take a cut on, but that's how I'm able to get more of my time back.
Right. Yeah, because time is the one resource that is finite, right? We can't, there's only so much. There's, as you said, but we were kind of green rooming before we started in here. And Marco said, yeah, there's only 24 hours in a day, man. Like I got the same 24 hours as everyone. And, you could look at somebody making $10 million a year and say, they've also got only 24 hours, right? So there's always that next level. And it's not about comparing yourself, guys. Just so by the way, for anyone on this call who gets lost in comparison, don't do that to yourself. It's like penalizing yourself for where you stand. That's not fair, right? If you're in the race, run the race, but you're only really running against your own potential. That's the only person you're really running against. And so I love asking this question, Marco, do you feel right now like you have reached your potential?
Not at all. No, there's more that I want to do. And I also wanted to add that it's important for us to have good time management. And I'll show you guys my schedule or my calendar. It's literally full every single day. It's been like this for a couple years now. Usually the mornings are for myself. First couple hours, when I wake up, that's Marco time. I put my phone away, and then yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so funny because we'll always think, oh yeah, once I'm rich and famous, then I'll have all the time in the world. And it's like you talk to pretty much anybody who's killing it, and what are they doing? They're time blocking. They know where their time's going, but that all of those appointments represent income producing activities, right? Like and I think that's the difference. It's not like scheduling in, and now I'm going to go spend an 8-hour lunch with my favorite lender who never gives me business. That's nice, but if you're getting free lunch, then your 8 hours is divided by whatever the cost of lunch is. That's your hourly pay. So like maybe $1 an hour. That's not great, arguably. So John Sellers said, who's here, awesome. I love that. John was also one of my early mentors. So his success leaves clues here. But he said, how did that go delegating? Was it a process? Like, is this something that had to unfold for you, or did you just kind of pull the trigger, or was it both?
It was hard. I went through 3 different admins to be able to find one that works. I went through a few VAs to be able to find one that works. That was probably the hardest thing to do because, managing people is tough. You have to deal with people's personalities, and everybody's got different goals. So that was definitely the hardest thing for me to do.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just pulled the trigger and I just went with it.
I love it. And when you were in the earlier, like, let's call them the sacrifice cycles, right? Where you're carving a lot of stuff out to provide more time in the business so you can set your family up. Steve Heron here, awesome agent out of Colorado. He asked, how did it go turning everything off while having a spouse? Like, did that put strain on the relationship? Did you have to kind of like frame it and have a conversation with your wife first?
Yeah, no, it was hard. It was hard on my family because I'm pretty close to my brothers. That was hard. But they understood. You have to be clear with them and tell them what your goals are and take it and run with it.
Yeah. And you have to take yourself seriously in order for them to take you seriously, which is awesome. I think people see that and they respect it. Some people might do some of this, guys, but that's all right. They can do this. Your income goes up. They do more of this. Your income goes up even more. They do more of this. Eventually they're like, oh, then they're your biggest fan, right? Like it's how it works. It's criticism at the beginning. It's compliments at the end. And then eventually like envy. I think commitment is a huge part of this. So that's awesome. Okay. So now you're starting to kind of get into this next chapter, which for you is leverage. And I want to get there in a minute. So let me write that down so I don't forget the word. But I will say, I'm curious, last year, because you were talking about those earlier years, the blend of your business, was the 25%, 25%, 25% and 15%, and then remainder, was that last year or was that earlier on?
That was last year.
Okay, so last year, 25% referral, sphere of influence and repeat business each, boom, 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 and then 15% investors and then the remainder. So I'm curious, are you anticipating this year will be like that, or are you thinking it will grow in one of those departments more?
I think it's going to be like that. I want it to be sphere, referrals, and repeat clients. That's the goal.
Yeah, sphere, referrals, and repeat, which will save you time and money. So that's awesome. So Joanne asked, she said, you answered about your brothers. She wants to know about your wife. So specifically to your wife, though, how did that go as you were carving time back into the business? Was that Was there strain there?
It was hard. It's
Yeah.
been hard, but we're making it work. She
Good.
understands, and that's been hard. It's definitely gonna burn. That's what I can tell you. You're gonna have to sacrifice to be able to get what you want.
Yeah, I will say you've got to have a strong relationship, guys, to be able to make those kinds of sacrifices. Divorce is very common in this industry. We know that. That's no surprise. And so you have to be really committed, and you have to have great communication, good framing up front, and quite frankly, the right partner, which sounds like Marco does. That's awesome.
Yeah, but
So
even like on my time management, like if she has something that we need to do, sometimes she'll send me the calendar invite and I'll accept it. And if I say I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there because I respect that calendar.
that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. So when you say I respect that calendar, actually talk about that for a second, because I think a lot of times people hear time blocking and time management, and you've got to really think about your calendar, and it's like it just kind of dies at that like surface level. And I saw your calendar, you're obviously legit using it, which by the way, there's like only really one calendar app out there, guys. It's Google. So that's what everybody's using if you're in the industry. But I'm just curious, like, to what extent are you scheduling things in your world? And there's no right answer here. I'm just curious what you're actually doing, because clearly it's working.
What do you mean?
So brushing your teeth, is that on your calendar, or is it like at what level does something go onto the calendar, I guess?
I mean, even from the minute I wake up, like 5 to 7:30 a.m. Marco time, um, that's Marco time. And then yeah, even if it's like hanging out on the weekend with some friends or whatever it is, I'm gonna put that on the calendar. So yeah, I guess I live by that
Same
100%.
here.
My
Yep.
my
Yep.
lead gen, which I have that in red, 3 times a week minimum. I think I have 3 hours minimum. We respect that. We don't schedule anything within that time. We schedule around it.
So tell me, what does that look like? What's the lead gen time look like?
It's three
What do you
times
do?
a week. What do I do? Is that your
Mhm.
question?
Yeah.
Um, I just go on my CRM and see what's gonna pop up and start making calls. I do pick up the phone a lot. I do zero cold calling. It's just calling my sphere, calling my referrals, calling past clients. Um, but yeah, my phone doesn't stop ringing. I don't know how, but just doesn't stop ringing sometimes.
Yeah, well, you have a very high likability factor. I mean, I've hung out with you enough times now to know you're just a naturally likable guy, which is awesome. There's something to that. Like, I don't know if you guys notice, Marco just has kind of like a natural smile. Like he's just a very approachable dude, doesn't seem threatening. All of those are really great things. And then you're very like clear with your communication. It's not overdone, it's not an overstated performance. You're you, and I feel like I'm getting the real you. Do you feel like there's like performance Marco and then real Marco, or are you just real all the time?
So no, yeah, I try to be real all the time, but there's definitely, I mean, this is the Marco that everybody gets. Um, Once we're talking business, once we're gonna close a sale, then I put my other hat on, my business hat on. Once we get the listing agreement signed, once we get an offer accepted, once we close the deal, then that's when nice Marco comes back on. So
I
it's
love
just
it.
you gotta have a business hat on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a business hat on. That's good. All right. So, so Viridiana asks, what would you recommend for newbies? And I want to get to that in just a second, but put that in the back of your brain here in a second, because sometimes we like lose track of being new in the industry the further you go along, which is kind of fun. But I'm interested in this because like this idea of who you are, quote unquote, and you have to have a little bit two faces, or at least you have to have like an intensity scale, right? Where it's like people need to trust that once you're in negotiation mode, you're going to be a boss and you're going to get it done, right? And at the same time, you need to be nice and approachable enough that they don't hate working with you. Right. I've met those agents where it's like, this guy's really smart and probably gets it done, but wowzers, it's just kind of like getting a sunburn every time I talk to him. And so, that when you first came into the industry, did you have like a role model or an avatar or a coach or a mentor or somebody that you were like imitating where you're like, oh, or did that come out of your auto background?
No. I partnered up with Devin. He's a realtor that I met over at KW. And I think I was paying him, I don't know what the percentage was. Like, once again, the first couple of years was 100% investing. So whatever he wanted, that's what I paid him. It might have been like 30%. Um, and I just had him kind of just on call because I didn't need help. I had a TC since the beginning. Full disclosure, I've only done my own transaction coordination for one deal ever. Um, Other than that, I've had a TC for every single deal that I've done. But yeah, no, I partnered up with a coach or a mentor that I just wanted to have somebody that I could call that's not the PB, because the PB is always, they're going to keep the peace. They want to keep everybody happy, but I wanted to have somebody that I could just be able to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, Devin, this came up.
Right.
What would you do? Um,
Totally.
even now, I have John Sellers that sometimes I'll just give him a call. Hey, John, what do you recommend? What can I do? If it's a commercial deal, then we partner up. And it's important for you to have somebody that you can trust. And you got to pay them. I mean, it's just time is important. So
Totally.
you're going to have to pay for it.
I agree. Yeah, it's funny. Devin was also taught by John, so it's like so many great connections, guys. And all of that goodness now here in the community, which is really fun. So, okay. So, and by the way, I'm putting some of these when we use acronyms, I always just try, because if people are newer, TC is transaction coordinator. This is someone that will handle the bulk of your paperwork for you, right? Making sure that you stay on with deadlines, running the paperwork through SkySlope, sending out stuff for signatures, maybe even drafting a doc. Different TCs work differently. I also, full transparency, I used a TC starting on my second transaction, and I never did one after that on my own. So I always joked, I'm like, I'm not sure that I know exactly how to do the paperwork, but like sometimes I think it's not that that's a good or bad thing. I'm not actually recommending that. And these days I tend to think most agents probably should go through their first 6 to 10 transactions, like do your own stuff so you learn the process, because sometimes it's harder to manage what you don't master, right? I know Marco well enough to know he's mastered it, which is incredible. But that can take some time. And if you get confused along the way, that's not great. PB means principal broker. Different states have different words for that, but just effectively, that's not your coach, right? Sometimes agents are like, well, my principal broker, I just need to ask them 155 questions. Like, yeah, that's the wrong person. There's so many people trying to get their time. Like, even if it was the right person and they wanted to help you, they probably don't have time. So you need to find someone else, a coach, a mentor, someone with a vested interest in your business, or just plugging in here, showing up at open coaching hour, like these types of resources that we try to make available to everybody so that you can win at a high level. That's great. Okay. Let me see. The question was, what would you recommend for newbies? Okay. So I always love this question with top producers. So if I had to like swipe your bank account all the way down to zero, you had no money, you're starting in the business tomorrow, what's thing number one? What are you doing right off the bat? You can't go buy new fancy stuff, whatever. What's the activity that you would do right away?
Start picking up the phone and start calling people 100%.
Calling who, and what are you saying?
My sphere, calling, and you got to ask for the business. So every time that I get off the phone, even if I sell a house and they're super happy and they tell me, Marco, thank you so much for helping us buy this house, or thank you so much for selling our house. I don't know how we could pay you, but you're welcome to come to our house, whatever it is. My response is always the best compliment, the biggest thank you back that I can get from you is the referral from your friends and family. If you have anybody that wants to buy, that wants to sell, that's interested in investing, just give them my number, give me their info. You don't have to pre-approve them or try to qualify them and see if they work, or see if they're going to qualify or not. Just connect them with me and I'll take care of the rest.
Oh man, I love that. I hope everyone got that. We've got it on the recording, so it's good. And I got part of it. The biggest thank you I can ever get is a big referral, or as a referral. Sorry, you didn't say big.
Just
is
referrals.
A referral from your friends and family.
Yeah.
If you have anyone that might be interested in buying or selling, and then you said what?
Or investing.
Yeah, buy, selling, or investing. Then what? Would you mind sending them to me? Do you ask for them to send you the contact info so that you can control?
I ask them to send me their contact info.
Perfect.
That way I can reach out to them.
Yep. And so for anyone who's newer to the business, this is a key differentiator. And it takes a lot of agents, I think like 10, some of them 100 years to learn this one point. which is handing your business card to somebody gives all of the control to the wrong person. That lead that you just gave your business card, they don't work for you. So they are 0% motivated to remember you, to keep the business card, to not light it on fire or throw it in the trash can. Like there's no motivation on their side. They don't know you yet, right? And even if they do know you, like when was the last time you anybody here like framed a business card and kept it for 10 years? It's unlikely. So on the other side, though, if you get their contact information and you're using your CRM like Marco does, then it goes in the CRM, you slap in some notes and you just stay in touch. And that's your business gets bigger every day if you're doing that all the time. That's awesome. I love the script. So if you were brand new, you would do, and you said you would call your sphere. Is this like everyone in your phone or everyone locally?
Everybody on my phone. Even when I started, I would go to every restaurant here in town and just introduce myself. Maybe leaving the business cards there might help, but obviously there's a business owner, and business owners are usually doing pretty well. So those are the people that I'm trying to target when I go visit businesses. Other than just leaving my cards there, I'm trying to find a manager, an owner, someone that could potentially be my client at some point.
Yeah. And by the way, there's two parts of that make total sense, because the manager and the owner both get paid more than the kind of base level employee. And that's not to discriminate against those folks. It's just obvious, right? Like as you escalate in any business, if you're an employee, the more you escalate into management, the more likely you are to be paid more than the person who started yesterday. Otherwise you're leaving. So that they're going to have a higher income. Higher income means they can buy a house or sell, right? If they have one already. Additionally, though, what I love about that perspective, Marco, is like the business owner and the manager tend to be connectors. Right? Like these are people that have a bigger web. They have their fingers in more pies. And so they're going to know more people who might also need your help. Do you find that to be a pretty significant part of your business?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's huge. And I have heard this exact strategy from so many people about like, I know all the business owners in my town. Like, I actually think that one goes maybe even way past just like selling real estate as a realtor. I think this is how you build your kind of like wealth network locally, is just get to know the power players, the influencers in your town, because you tend to be the average of the 5 people you're spending the most time with. If they're all business owners that are doing really well, guess what you're going to become? Right? That becomes the inevitable thing. If I hung out with people who knew how to play sports, maybe I'd figure that out. So that's really good stuff. Okay. So I love this. You would call these people. What's the next thing you would do? You would look for that business, go through your whole entire phone. Would you call out of state people? I'm curious on that one.
No.
Yeah.
No, I've never called anybody out of state.
Perfect. And so then, so you're calling all folks that are in your licensed state. Makes total sense. So you can just direct work the business. How far what's the furthest you've ever driven to work a deal? I'm curious.
I am licensed in Washington, but I haven't done a deal over there.
Okay.
I don't know. I've done deals that are like anything that's like an hour away. I've taken listings, but I've sold a lot of homes that I've never been to. Like 3-4 hours away, but usually a 1 hour radius, the most that I drive. But let me take that back. I do drive a lot. I think I did like my vehicle's got 90,000 miles and I bought it 2.5 years ago. So I drive a lot. I spend a lot of time in my car. I call it my mobile office.
If only you knew a good car guy that could, I'm just kidding. So that's awesome. So possibly out to a 3 or 4 hour radius on like listings. Do you ever do that? Do you do any of those on Zoom ever?
No, I've never met with the client on Zoom.
Awesome. And so you'll just drive out there, meet with them?
No, just over the phone. Hey, I'm going to send you the listing agreement via DocuSign. Let me know if you have any questions.
I love it.
But yeah, it's confidence is key. I took a lot of years of, even when I was in the car business, just practicing role playing, talking to myself in the mirror, practicing with my family, with my wife, a lot of role playing.
Yeah. Me too. I love role playing. I think gives you a lot of confidence. This is where, like, I think there's a ton of agents who are like, I never use scripts. I'm like, I know, I can tell. No offense, but maybe a little offense. So I think using scripts initially just to give yourself some confidence and like some vocabulary, so you're not just like searching for words. It's the difference between like has anyone ever accidentally memorized a rap or something because you just listened to the song so many times and you loved it and you're like, West Philadelphia, born and raised, like whatever, your thing, right? And so you've got your rap going on. I just picked the nerdiest one on the planet. Anyway, but then that, right? You know it cold. You don't have to think about it. It just comes out. That's script practice. That's really all it does. And it just gives you some good words that you can use, as opposed to if you put a cool beat on right now and you were like, all right, Jeff, just freestyle rap for a little while. That would be garbage, y'all. Like it would be really terrible. And it would not sound like I know what I'm doing, but I could probably do that like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for a couple minutes. Why? Because I watched it a lot as a kid. That's why. So I know it. So that's awesome. All right. So we got some questions coming up, but I have a question. Your very first year in the business, do you remember how many listings versus buyers on those 10?
Mostly buyers at the beginning. Now it's shifting more into listings, but definitely buyers. Yeah.
Yeah. That tends to be pretty standard. I think when you're newer in the industry, your comfort zone, because it's like the way that we think, right? It's almost, you need a mindset shift at one point to just understand that you can be the person that's representing these properties, but finding listing opportunities and starting to develop that part of your business takes time. Do you remember the second year, did it already start to shift when you went from 10 to 20?
When I went full time, because I was able to take more time to do the listings.
Yeah. Well, were you just getting more at bats for listings? Like were people starting to call you and say, hey, we bought a year or two ago, whatever, and now we need to sell?
No, I was just actually going on the listing appointments because at the beginning I was a little nervous. I think my first 3 listing appointments, I didn't get the listings, but after that, it's just been 99% closing ratio.
Good. Yeah, as it should be, because you just started to understand the dynamics of that conversation, what works. And you talked a lot about this last week, so I'm not going to go super deep on that because Marco was really generous last week in giving his listing presentation. And the short version, if you haven't watched it, is there isn't one. He shows up, he's got comps, he's prepared, he understands the market, he talks them through it, brings the contract. It's like, let's get it done, right? It's very cut and dry, or sounds like even hops on a phone call, handles the conversation. Let me send over that paperwork. Let's get things started. Whatever your scripting is.
Yeah, it's important for you to have control of the conversation. Because if you show that you're confident and that you can get it done, people are gonna just go along with it. They're gonna let you take control. And keep this in mind: you're handling people's biggest transaction of their life sometimes, and they're putting that in your hands. So, and there's a price for that. For me, when I list a home, we're going to get paid, at least 3 or 4%. And that's not negotiable, plus the buyer's agent's fee. So my script that I use when someone tries to negotiate me is as simple as like, you don't go to your friend's house if you're sick. You go to a professional. If you go to a doctor, right? People are going to agree, right? So you come to Marco if you want to get your whole house sold for top dollar and for the best service. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just writing it down. That's if I look like I'm over here because I want to give that to everybody in writing. So you don't go to your friend's house if you're sick. You go to a doctor, right? You come to Marco if you want to get your home sold for top dollar, right? I love it. And it's so good. And also Marco can't help but drop in the tie downs. Tie downs are words like, right? He's just seeking agreement at the end of a statement. It's really, really effective, guys. If you're not familiar with tie downs as just a scripting device, learn them. It's anything, could be like, shouldn't we? Don't you think? Wouldn't you agree? Right? Okay. Yeah. Anything like that. If I end a statement like we all know, it's great. It's best to work with an agent if you really want to make top dollar on your house. Right? If I say right, my odds of them agreeing with me go up by like 90%. It's insane.
And you got to nod your head.
Yeah, you do. I love it without doing the weird smile I just did. Okay. So that'll freak people out. So, good. This is really, really good. So by now, okay, so fast forward to today, what's your listing to buyer split? And you can rough this out. You don't need a percentage, and I'm not going to hold you to it. But I'm
What do
just
you
curious,
mean?
like you said initially it was a lot more buyers, and you said it's trended up on the listings. Are you at 50-50 now? Do you find like you're carrying a bigger listing inventory now, even than that? What do you think?
I think it's about 60-40, 60% listings, 40% buyers.
Yep, that sounds
And
right.
then my team does a lot of the buyers as well.
Yeah, good. Which is also higher leverage because there's better time value for you in that. That's awesome. And where would you like to see, this is an interesting question. Where would you like to see your business in, let's say, 2 years? I don't want to go too far in the future because that gets weird. But
I
like two
think in
years.
the next 2 years, well, my goal is to do 100 deals this year with me and the
Good.
team. Next 2 years, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, you don't have to. So that's great. By the way, a lot of people advocate for shorter time frames when you're making goals, right? Even quarterly instead of annual, because a year's a long time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't remember February 21st of last year.
Yeah. And
I
I
just
like
can't.
to
It feels like
do,
forever.
I wanted to add, I like to do, sometimes I'll do like 90 days of no days off. That's what I'm doing right now. And that's literally, I do 90 days without a single day off. And I call it grind mode, where I'm waking up early, working till late. And that's a money making activity. That's what's going to make the money.
I love that. And I'm curious on this because I've never actually asked you this, Marco. So, do you view like what you're doing? Do you gamify it at all? Like, does it feel like a game that you're playing?
100%,
Yeah.
definitely. And there's always going to be people hating. Just be prepared for that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're the one that's closing the deals. You're the one that's making the money. Um, so it is what it is.
Yep. I love that. And by the way, I get a disproportionately yes response to that to anybody making, let's call it over 500,000 a year. It's like, is this a game? And almost every time it's like, yes, because, and there's a psychology to that, guys. Gamification is really powerful. First off, if you just kind of study that, it's why a lot of apps have included gamification now because they know that it motivates human behavior, but it also minimizes your kind of like risk avoidance. Because what's weird, if I'm in a video game and I can get like shot, but it's a video game, it's not that big of a deal. So if I'm gamifying things in my head, I minimize the risk. I'm like not afraid of making a mistake, but I am afraid of like not doing my best and not actually competing, right? And sometimes in life, what do we do? Well, it's like, I don't want to screw anything up, so I just won't do anything. That's the worst possible way to play a game, right? Well, I'm just not going to play. Well, then you're not going to win. That's not a way to play a game. So gamification is a great way to just feel better about like, oh, what if I call them and they say no? I don't know. Play the freaking game, man. Like call them. That's great. I love that. So Joanne says, how many people are on your team right now, and are you actively expanding?
No, I have maybe like 3 people, 4 people a week reaching out that want to join, but I am not expanding. I am not looking to add people unless I get a rock star. If there's someone out there that you're a rock star and you can do the grind mode, you can go 90 days without work, without having a day off, then I'm more than happy to interview somebody. But in the meantime, I'm not going to grow the team. If anybody leaves, I think I'm just going to keep it that way because I'm going to focus on my production.
Awesome. And I see that Viridiana asked another question here. She said, what kind of information do you include in your buyer and or your seller consultations? And I know you're not doing a formal presentation on the seller side, but like what type of stuff are you covering when you meet with a buyer or a seller?
For a buyer, I think we have a buyer package that we sometimes we'll email or we'll just give them the PDF, but there's not a whole lot that we give them other than just, hey, this is the game plan. This is what we're gonna do. I ask them what they're wanting to do, and the reason why you're wanting to do this, and after that, we just come up with the plan and we tackle it.
Love it. Yeah,
So
it's all about them.
100% about them. I never make it seem like we're what do you call it? I like to be more of a friend than coming in as the realtor trying to close the deal. I don't know if that makes sense. But
Right.
at the end
No,
of
it
the
makes
day,
total sense.
yeah, at the end of the day, we got to close the deal, but we want to have fun with it. So it goes
Yeah.
back to what you said. It's just kind of a game.
Okay. So there's a book that I'm reading right now called Predictably Irrational. It's a really great book, by the way, if anybody just wants like a cool read on the side. It's not necessarily like a business book, but it's just cool observations. But he's talking about how decisions are made by humans. And Marco, you'll totally appreciate this. He talks about the difference between operating within what he calls social norms, just like asking a friend for a favor. Like, hey, I'm going to be out of town. Would you grab my mail while I'm gone? Right? I'm not like, hey, Marco, we're neighbors. Would you grab my mail and I'll pay you $200? That's weird because that takes what would have been a social norm and it moves it over into what he calls a market or a financial norm, right? So they're basically humans trade goods and services in two ways. We either do it in a social way or we do it in a market way. And the problem a lot of times that realtors have is that they're swerving between these lanes. Right? Like, we're friends, I promise, but I'm angry that you worked with a different agent. It's like, that's you're mixing, the example he gives in the book is a little bit, it would be like going on a date and paying for the date. I'll leave it there. He says it in a different way, but paying for the date is a different, that's a market norm. That's not a social norm. And so what I like about this, though, is if you can keep it on purely social norms, like I'm your friend, you can actually reframe a lot of questions, even about commission, which is a market norm conversation. You can keep that social. Listen, I want to be able to give you the very best service possible and help you to achieve your goals of making the most money on this house. The only way that I can do that is if we're going to be able to market it together really well, right? Like that's still over here. It's still social because what did I make it about? You, your goals, how much I care about you, etc. I wasn't like, well, my compensation is what I need to make so I can pay my bills. It's me, I, me, right? And that will drop the bar pretty quickly. Joanne asked a follow-up question just out of curiosity. How many people are on your team right now?
I have 4 licensed realtors and 2 admins.
Perfect. That sounds about right. And you're not necessarily looking to scale up unless you drop in with a rock star. Obviously, always looking for people who want to be at EXP. So I get that part because that's a huge opportunity. Okay, so here's an interesting question, and I always love asking this to anyone who's achieving at your level. And then I want to open it up for some questions because I know we're getting so many questions in the chat that there's going to be people who want to pipe in. So I'll probably wrap up with this. But like, if there's anything that you could have done differently along the way where you're like, oh, dude, I really screwed that up. And I bet I would be 4, 5, 10 times bigger if I had done whatever. What's that? And what would you have changed, I guess?
If there's anything I could have done different, I wish I would have left my job a little sooner and done real estate full time.
Totally. So you could have given the time, the energy and attention.
Yeah, and you got to get uncomfortable. Like even me being on this Zoom call, I don't do a lot of Zoom. And I am a little nervous, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to get uncomfortable so you can get better at it. So I wish I would have left my job a little sooner so I could have gotten a little better in real estate.
That's awesome. And you just mentioned having like a little bit of stage fright, which by the way, I get that all the time. And just for anyone who doesn't know, it's so normal. And I think we think like that's going to fall off and I'll just feel 100% natural. Like I'm, Justin Timberlake or whatever at a listing appointment. It's like, no. And first off, I think even JT has said that he gets stage frights or whoever your artist is. So that's cool. So you would have changed the job component, freed up more time. What else? Give me one more. What other thing would you have changed?
I wish I would have. What's your question again?
What could you have changed over the last 4 years? Like if you could go back and do it again, you said you would have quit the job a little bit sooner. And then is there one more thing that you would have done differently, even starting all the way back at day one?
Yeah, I wish I would have added staff since the beginning to have them do the stuff that I don't like to do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because you would have gotten more time, probably more leverage. Yeah. Maybe you would have had a similar net income, but then your business would have grown faster.
Yeah. My biggest thing is spending my time writing contracts, meeting clients, and negotiating deals and lead gen. That's what I like to do.
Yep.
And those are the money-making activities. Everything else just goes off to someone else.
Okay, I'm curious on this. What percentage of the people that you meet with, because you said this on the listing side, but just in general, what percentage of the people that you meet with or talk to on a regular basis end up doing work with you? What like if you're making these phone calls, right? You said 3 hours a week of guaranteed lead gen where you're going deep into your sphere. what percentage of those conversations actually transact, and what percentage, I mean, and these need to be guesses, I'm sure, but just,
Yeah, I would say people that want to work with me, or people that I want to work with, it's usually 80%. And there's that 20%
oh,
that I'm not going to click with, and that's okay. Um, it's okay for them to turn me down, and it's okay for me to turn people away sometimes. That's just the world that we live in. We're not going to click with everybody.
yep. I love it. I love that. Okay, really, really good stuff, man. This is so cool. What a treat to get to speak with somebody who does this level of business. Only, by the way, again, only 4 years, right, in the business. Isn't that what you said? Geez, Louise, man, just tearing it up. I love that. Okay, so I want to open up the floor for some questions. So if anybody has a question for Marco, while you have a superstar top producer, Jason Giles, how you doing, my friend? Oh, I see Jason and Jen on here. How you guys doing? And what's your question?
Well, we're doing fantastic. And I was excited to jump into this one. I promised Marco I would not talk, but I couldn't hold myself back. So I'm jumping in here. I wanted to say this because after the last Core 90 you did and then doing this one, man, you're a beast, brother. You are awesome. You bring a ton of value, and just listening to what you do and what you say, it comes so naturally. So, my question is, because you got rid of a lot of distractions. So looking back, are those things even in your vision now to want to bring back in, like the TV and all that other stuff? Or have you created a new norm for yourself of what you want?
Thank you, Jason, by the way. But yeah, I think I'm slowly putting things back in. I still don't do TV, but now I go to the movies and try to make a night out of it. No, yeah, I'm bringing them back in slowly.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
took the time that you needed to create what you wanted to create, and now you're going to integrate those things to be able to still have sustainability in what you're doing, right?
correct. Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely.
Well, you're awesome, brother. Thank you, Marco.
No, thank you, Jason. Thank you.
I love that question. And for anyone who doesn't know, Jason and Jen Giles, awesome agents as well, and great leaders here in the community. Thank you guys for being here. So, what's interesting on that for me, though, Marco, is like, I want everyone to think really fast in your head. How long did high school feel like it was for you? I don't know if everyone's like me, but I feel like high school lasted like 2,000 years. That's how long it felt like for me. But I wasn't super popular, so some of you might have had a more fun experience in high school. But high school was 4 years. That's how long Marco carved things out of his world. 4 years ago, just to be clear, was before COVID, right? So just to put that into some perspective for everyone, it's a long time. It's a commitment. But is it worth it, Marco?
It's definitely worth it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you creating a lot of stability and like a kind of future safety and security for your family as a result of the sacrifices that you've made?
Yeah. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but definitely it opens up doors for the things that you can do.
That's great.
And
So go
I
ahead.
don't think I'm gonna be a realtor for a long time. I think it's just gonna be maybe for a few more years, and then I'm gonna move on to something else.
That's awesome. Well, and what's funny about this is, and I love that. I want to talk to you more about that because I think there's high leverage ways to keep your business running without having to exit it in real estate, which is rad. Part of what EXP does, right? But also beyond that, you can even do this with your primary book of business. So I would say, for anyone thinking though about like, what do I need to do to really be successful in this industry? There's a good chance that there's something in your way right now that you could actually just choose to carve out. And that's sounds like a pretty big realization a lot of us have had on this call. What other types of questions do we maybe have for Marco while we've got him here on the call? John, I saw that you unmuted.
I think I'd have a question, So when I hear Marco say what he's saying, oh, I cut all this stuff out and I did all this, first of all, I hear like, well, that's pretty easy to do when, first of all, you weren't married at the time. It's pretty easy to do when you don't have children and you're young. How do we do that when we've got family and we've got this and we got that? And I guess the question I would have is, Marco, is that, and I'm going to make a question and a statement, is everybody has to do it to their own degree. Isn't that right?
Right.
And I guess that's the question I'd ask. You looked at it and said, I'm okay with cutting these things out with where I'm at in my life, right? Like I spent a lot of time with my family, so it's okay. You still call your mom, don't you? I know you do. He's still a mama's boy. So don't you think he doesn't talk to his mom? Because he does. How often do you talk to your mom?
I call her once a day.
Okay, so did you hear that, guys? He made it sound like he doesn't talk to his family, cut his family out. He calls his mama every day. How many of you other men on here call your mama every day? Now, maybe you should call your mom every other day or at least once a week, y'all. So what I'm getting at is it made it sound like he doesn't do anything else. I know, Marco, he does do other things. But what he did was he made a conscious decision to sacrifice what he needed to get to where he wanted to go. So listen, so there's something I got learned years ago, Marco, and we've talked about this, right? It's like, you've got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And if you're willing to do whatever it takes, you rarely have to do whatever it takes. Right, Marco? Haven't we talked about
Right.
that? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and that's what
definitely.
I want y'all to hear is that he was willing to do whatever it takes. But the truth is, he still has time to call his mom every day. And he's not joking. He does call his mom every day. He still finds time to be with his brother. He still finds time to give his brother a car that he wrecked it, right? So he's having to spend time with his brother on the wrecked car, right? So he's still finding time to go traveling, but he's willing to not do all that to get to where he wants to go. Right, Marco?
You're right. Yeah,
I didn't want to
100%
make
right.
it sound because it made it sound like you're a robot. And you're
No,
not a
not at all.
robot, are
No,
you?
not at all. No.
Like, I know people are robots. So I want everyone to think about this. And as we're talking to our friends and our groups and our agents, because a lot of people are on this call, y'all are leaders. And you're leading not only yourself, but you're leading your groups. And I want you to understand this that Marco was this guy that's willing to do whatever it takes. And since he had that mindset, he hasn't been willing to do whatever it takes, hasn't had to. But he has disciplined himself around certain things that were challenging. And then they became simpler. And we've talked over the last year, Marco. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made in the last year that if you're like, oh my gosh, and Jeff brought up a little bit, I'm like, how many have we talked about? You're like, oh my
Uh,
gosh. Like, it's not a straight line, is it?
no, it's been hard. There's gonna be mistakes that are gonna be made. Um, yeah, no, there's been a lot of mistakes. I think one
And I
of the
guess
biggest things
I'd
was,
ask you another question, Marco.
yeah,
One of the things that's been amazing for me working with you is that you're a guy that calls and asks a lot of questions.
yeah.
And most people have a hard time. What allows you, how do you humble yourself enough to make those calls? Because a lot of people don't want to bug people or they don't want to look stupid. How do you get
Um,
your head
I
around
I always tell myself the worst that can happen is a no. Someone tells me no. That's the worst that can happen. So I always just take it and go with it.
and how do you have that mindset of like not wanting to, because you'll call and you're like, I don't know the answer, right? And maybe the answer sometimes, like sometimes you call me, it's like it's super simple, right? And you could have like, oh, I should have known that, right? But sometimes it's not. How do you get your mind around this idea that I'm okay to look dumb? I'm okay to
Um,
not that I don't have to know everything and that I
but
might actually look foolish in front of somebody, but it's okay with me to get where I want to go. How do you work your head around that? Because that's not easy.
I just picture myself in a couple more years and what my goals are, what I want to do. Um, and that's how I'm able to get uncomfortable. I have goals, I have things I want to do, things I want to buy. Um, and so if it's gonna take a phone call and me being uncomfortable, it is what it is. But
So do you
obviously,
look at it as a way to short? So I guess the question is, your feeling is if I can shortcut my learning process, even if I have to feel dumb, I'm willing to do that because I won't look dumb after I get this question answered, and then I can go farther along. Is that? I don't know if you actually magically think that or you just do it.
I kind of just do it. But obviously, like with yourself, it took a few months for us to get to know each other, for us to have a relationship and actually feel comfortable with me giving you a call and asking a question. It wasn't like, oh, I just met you, now I'm gonna ask you 1,000 questions. It took time.
But what I would say on this, guys, is you were persistent. And as I ask everybody on here, right, is that what are the where are the blind spots you have in your business right now? And what questions do you need to get answered that if you went and found help to get those answers, you could move faster? That's what I've seen Marco do, because he was willing to get uncomfortable. He was willing to ask questions he didn't know. He's willing to call people he didn't know. And that shortened, and then obviously an incredible work ethic. Okay. I mean, if you don't work and you do all this stuff, it makes no difference. Okay. Just understand, like, if you're trying to work 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week in real estate, being successful, unless you're a freak, it ain't going to happen. I'm not saying you need to work 90 days straight. Okay. I don't know if that's healthy either. We'll talk about that. First season sometimes, right? But we don't want to do that too long. But the question is for you guys, like, what are those questions? So as you move, so anyways, those are some things I just want to point out, Jeff, because I want to make sure people heard, like, he's not a robot, right?
Right.
I want to hear like how I call him the kind of like, he's the silent assassin, or like the wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, he's so mild mannered, he's not physically intimidating, and yet he's a killer underneath, and he'll do whatever it takes to get where he wants to go, honestly and ethically. And I'd ask each of us, what are we willing to do? Where are we willing to get uncomfortable?
I love that. Well, and Marco, I think a teddy bear assassin, like a teddy bear holding a machine gun tattoo, would be really cool, man. You should do that.
That would be pretty cool.
So if there's any key takeaway from today, the one thing we know is everybody needs to call Marco's mom at least once a day, because clearly that's producing all of his results. That's where he's getting all the juice. So it's good. I see Liz Boisvert has her hand up here. Liz, how you doing and what's going on?
Hey, Marco. You make this look and feel really easy. You're just like calm and cool and collected. So I love that. And then we're honored to have you part of our group. I would like to push. Yeah, I'd like to push you just a little bit, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said that you like to double what you do every year, double the amount of closings you've had. But then when Jeff asked you what the next 2 years look like for you, and we put you on the spot, right? And so it sometimes, like, it's hard to pinpoint because you probably know exactly what your goals are, but how would you inspire us do what we're doing, but then double it? Like, what this year, how are you going to do that? Like, do you have new tools that you're incorporating in your business? Is there one thing that you're doing, or is it really just doing exactly what you're doing and hoping for the best?
Just doing the same thing that I've been doing, but doing it better.
Okay.
But you always got to have a why, like a reason why you're doing this.
Exactly.
That's important to have that. So I have a dream board right in front of me.
There you go.
I can almost show you guys.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
So that's literally me.
Nice.
Got the whole dream board. This is my workstation. So I look at that dream board every single time that I'm working, and it's got the things that I want,
Awesome.
things that I want to do. And that's my biggest why. So finding your reason on why you're doing this, and also doing it better.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well said. Okay. So everybody, when we're done here today, we're going to all like talk about our whys a little more, right? So can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
So you said that in a few years, you won't be doing real estate anymore. I love that you have maybe even bigger aspirations to do, because we grow and we evolve. So do you plan on, you're working so hard to build this business, and you really are striving to have those repeat clients and referrals. So how do you do that without feeling like you're letting those people down that call you in 5 years and you're no longer doing this? Are you going to build a team so that you kind of have this machine that runs without you? Or like, can you speak on that a little bit more on how to plan for future?
I think my plan is going to be to maybe just work with investors, but not work with first-time buyers anymore, not work with,
Okay.
It's going to be tough to make that decision, but yeah, I got to find somebody that I can partner up with that's going to be able to take on the business down the road.
And start nurturing that now, right? So that the people that you bring on as partners, you have time to nurture them and really get them to be as strong as you are. So it's easy to pass that baton, and then you can pick and choose what you really want to do more of. And yeah, I see great things, and I really appreciate that you took time today to share your secrets, and I hope that you'll do it again soon.
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
your year's
Liz,
going. Okay, back to Jeff. Thank you.
thank you.
That's awesome. Liz is awesome. Thank you, Liz. And what great questions. I mean, this is interesting because the concept, by the way, of working with investors for anyone who hasn't done it can be a little foreign, but I happen to know, and we've got less than 10 minutes here. So let's talk about this for a minute, Marco, because I heard, I'm trying to remember who it was. There was a coach one time who said, why aren't you buying what you're selling? Right? Like you're in the, maybe it was John, it was probably John again, dang it. Anyway, but this concept of like you're in real estate, how many times have we heard agents say, oh, this is such a great investment opportunity. Anyone could buy it. I'll show you how to get it with no money down. And then you're like, wait, if you can do that, why aren't you doing that? I don't understand what's going on. So I happen to know you're doing this now. You're buying. What's your investment strategy? What are you trying to do? Are you doing, you had mentioned flips. Are you flipping and holding? Are you flipping to gain extra cash? What are you doing?
I'm looking to flip and gain extra cash. But that also helps when I pick up new clients. I tell them a little bit about me and what I do. And obviously, I sell houses, I help buyers, I help people sell their houses, but I have a couple rentals. I got a flip and working on number 2 under my belt. So it's just, I mean, when they're choosing between different realtors, I just put myself out there. It's like, you got to practice what you preach kind of thing.
Yep. I love that. I had an early coach one time who was joking with me and he said, just buy an empty lot somewhere for like a couple $1,000s. That way, when somebody asks if you own any real estate, you can say, oh, I own a lot. But anyway, so that's a realtor joke. Sorry, everybody. That's awesome. And I actually do believe in the reason to increase your income in real estate is to create that spread so that you have headroom so that you can purchase, so that you can offset your earned income necessity, right? It's one of the things that's also baked into EXP. It's baked into the stock. It's baked into the rev share. It's a lot of stuff. But in addition, you should be buying real estate. You should be flipping. You should be participating in the marketplace. And if it's been 10 years since you've bought a house, don't do that. It's like really important. In fact, Lexi says this all the time. I don't know if she said it to you, Marco, when you guys were green rooming, but she really believes that everybody should be buying a property fairly regularly so that they can remember how friggin' stressful it is to be inside a transaction as like the client, even if you're agenting for yourself, so to speak. And I think that's really valid. So I love that you're doing that. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. Are there any parting shots that you'd like to leave with people? Like something that would be really helpful for them to know as they're chasing after their why, trying to create a better life for their family? Anything that you feel like this is like Marco's flag, plant concept or just a cool secret tip you've got or something?
Yeah, just find out your why and just stick to it. And like I told you earlier, there's 24 hours a day and we all have the same 24 hours in the day. So choose how you spend your time wisely.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and how true, right? I mean, it's so funny because it's really easy to get a little, what would you call it? Kind of like almost jealous, I think, of other people sometimes, where you're like, they have all this cool stuff. They must have some resource that I don't have. And that resource might just be commitment. Like,
yeah,
that's a bummer to say it that way, but it literally might be. If you're not committed enough to doing what other people have done, then you're not going to get the same result. I believe it probably took Michael Phelps a lot of commitment to go win 900 friggin' gold medals at the Olympics or whatever. It's like, that's insane. And that's kind of what you're doing in real estate. So congratulations on all your successes. Thanks for being such a resource. If people had a specific question for you, would you be offended if they reached out to you maybe on social media or something like that, just to get in touch?
Not at all. No,
Cool.
Reach out. I'm happy to help. There's no secret sauce. It's just commitment. So, but I'm happy to share anything.
Cool. I love that. Well, you guys already saw what his social looked like earlier. And John said, what about for referrals? If people have referrals to send you, how do you want them to get in touch with you?
Email. Email works best.
Perfect. What's your email?
It's just Marco Sanchez Broker at Gmail.
Marco Sanchez Broker at gmail.com. Or Gmail, if you guys are old school. All right, cool. Well, that's really I'm writing it down here so everyone has it. That's really great. And what markets are you working in, Marco, in terms of getting those referrals? Just so people watching this on the replay or maybe online.
anywhere from Salem up to Portland. That's
In Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon. Yep.
Awesome.
Anything off of I-5.
Cool. So the northern half of the state of Oregon, if you happen to know someone there, Marco's a dude and he's a cool one. So give him a call. Really awesome stuff, man. I really appreciate you being here. And thank you to everyone who came and joined us today, invested in yourself, gave some time. Now, the question is not whether or not you attended a webinar. The question is what happens next, right? What are you going to do with the information? Information by itself is hollow, doesn't do anything for you. Information with application is where it all exists. So let's get it on. Let's go out there and sell a bunch of real estate. Thank you guys. Thank you, Marco. Thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.